Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to Yoga Wellness Instructor Program, Unit number 1, Section 4. The topic is Life Sketches and Teachings of Yoga Masters. It is not an easy topic because each yoga master, the names which are mentioned in the syllabus are not the ordinary people. They are the extraordinary personalities. Because of them only, today still yoga is there. So among those names, there are many great rishis, right from Patanjali Maharshi. Right from Patanjali Maharshi, Shankaracharya, Swami Vivekananda, Paramahamsa Yogananda, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, Sri Aurobindo, Swami Shivananda. As we are keeping on telling the name, list goes on, list keep on goes. Till today's our Ramdev Baba. From the Patanjali Maharshi, I will start just in a brief. Of course, every personality we are going to discuss in a brief only. Patanjali Maharshi contributed to the yoga, giving the Yoga Sutras. Yesterday we have discussed about the Yoga Darshana is contributed by Patanjali Maharshi, one who is systematically presented. And this Patanjali Maharshi is also seems to be presented Ayurveda as well as a Sanskrit grammar. The Sanskrit grammar was written by the Panini Maharshi. But over the Panini Maharshi's Vyakarana Sutras, Patanjali Maharshi written the Mahabhashya. And also it is considered Patanjali Maharshi is written some Ayurvedic textbooks also. So that is a great contribution of the Patanjali Maharshi, especially the mind management, the speech management and health management. The more we will be looking into when we are studying the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, who is the Patanjali and all those things. So hence, this is good enough for us to remember the Patanjali Maharshi's name as we are going to discuss about the great yogis. Then next comes Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya is also contributed a lot in the field of yoga. Yoga means don't think only the asanas. You may be wondering, I never seen any poster of the Shankaracharya doing the asanas. Always I have seen the picture of Shankaracharya sitting with the danda in the hand. Yoga means what is yoga? Jnana yoga is there, bhakti yoga is there, raja yoga is there, karma yoga is there. So there are so many streams of yogas are there. Yoga is a one word. There are many streams. Jnana yoga is one of the stream. And Shankaracharya is the one who written the commentaries on the Yoga Shastra, like a Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is a Yoga Shastra as well as a Brahma Vidya. So Shankaracharya written a commentary on that. In the Bhagavad Gita also there are quite a few definitions are given for what is yoga. And also Shankaracharya wrote the commentaries on the Upanishads. And there are specific Upanishads which are contributing a lot into the yoga profession, into the yoga field. I will give just example because we will be studying again in some other units. The one example is like a Pancha Pranas. When you practice the pranayama, you know the pranas and you heard the prana. Prana means the physiological functions. Like a Pancha Pranas are there. These Pancha Pranas are mentioned in the Prashnopanishad. And to understand that Prashnopanishad, we have to take the help of the Shankaracharya, one who wrote the commentary on it. So similarly, the Pancha Koshas, The Panchakoshas, the 5 sheaths, which is coming from the Taittiriya Upanishad. To understand the Taittiriya Upanishad better, again we need to take the help of the Shankaracharya for his commentary. So hence, in this way, Shankaracharya contributed a lot to the field of yoga. The more we will be seeing when we look into the Prasthanatraya and Purusharthas, that time we will discuss more. Just I am giving the hint today, okay? The next patriotic monk of India, Swami Vivekananda. We will see the more about Swami Vivekananda now, because he is the one, the modern Swami, who promoted a lot for the contribution of the yoga. If today yoga is popular across the world, that is just because of Swami Vivekananda. He is the one who given the seed to the entire world when he attended the what you call Parliament of Religious. Now let us see Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda, known his pre-monastic life as Narendranath Datta. He was born in an affluent family in Kolkata. That time it was Calcutta. Nowadays we are calling as Kolkata, but it was Calcutta. On 12th January 1863. Today is the 9th January. So in another 3 days, we will be celebrating Swami Vivekananda birthday. So 12th January 1863. His parents were Vishwanath Datta, father, and mother Bhuvaneshwari Devi. A precious boy, Narendra excelled in music, gymnastics, and studies. By the time Narendranath Datta graduated from the Calcutta University, he had acquired a vast knowledge of different subjects, especially Western philosophy and history. Both with a yogic temperament, he used to practice meditation even from his boyhood days, even from his childhood days, and was associated with Brahmo movement for some time. So when Swami Vivekananda used to study, he had a special power, like that is called photographic memory. Like when I show some pages to you, when you read any book, what you do, you will read that sentence by sentence or word by word. You are not going to read the book like a spelling by spelling, the word by word. Like a Vivekananda is there, oh, Vivekananda. You don't see that word. The moment when you see all these letters together, immediately you say Vivekananda. Like word. And some people with more, they will see sentence by sentence. No, the specialty of Swami Vivekananda, he used to read page by page. That is called is a photographic memory. He used to go to the library, he used to borrow the books, and the next day he will go back and return the books to the library. One day librarian asked, hey, are you making fun of me every day taking the books and bringing back? Are you reading or not? Swami Vivekananda says, if you are having a doubt, you can ask me anything from any page. The librarian takes that one book and opens one page and he tells the page number. Swami Vivekananda says everything what is given in the page number. So in the modern way, like it is like taking the screenshot in the mobile or in your laptop. What we do, if something interesting is there, suddenly we click on the screenshot. Like that, Swami Vivekananda used to take the screenshot on every page. So he turns the page, screenshot is over. He turns the page, screenshot is over. Like a scanning every page. Everything is written in his mind. Eka Santagrahi. That is the power of concentration of Swami Vivekananda. And he met Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the guru of Swami Vivekananda is Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. At the threshold of youth, Narendra had to pass through a period of a spiritual crisis when he was assailed by doubts about the existence of God. Swami Vivekananda used to have only one question. Have you seen the God? Is God is existing? Whomever he used to meet, that great Mahatmas you call or great yogis you call, the first question he asks, have you seen the God? Did God existing? No one can use to give a very confident answer. You may say, is God existing? You will say, yes, God is existing. The next question he will ask, have you seen? No one is given the answer to Swami Vivekananda with confidence. And it was that time he first heard about Sri Ramakrishna from one of his English professor in college. In the college, the professor used to teach the English. That time he mentioned Ramakrishna Paramahamsa name. So one day in November 1881, Narendranath Datta went to meet Sri Ramakrishna, who was staying at the Kali temple in Dakshineshwar. Still is not Vivekananda, Narendra straight away asked the master, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, a question which he had put to several others but had received no satisfactory answer. So first time Narendra is meeting the Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. The first time itself, the first question. What is that question? Sir, have you seen God? Without a moment's hesitation, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa replied confidently. What is the answer? Yes, I have. I see him as clearly as I see you, only in a much intenser sense. So this is the answer is given first time. Swami Vivekananda as a Narendranath Datta got the answer from Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, that too with clear confidence. When someone is speaking, we can sense whether that person is speaking with confidence or not. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa with confidence, and not only he simply said, I saw, he also said, I see him as clearly as I see you. And some of the great people also extension they says, as Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said to Narendra, not only I have seen, I can also show to you. Some people says the Ramakrishna Paramahamsa told to Narendranath. So apart from removing the doubts from the mind of Narendra, Sri Ramakrishna own him overthrow is pure unselfish love. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's love like a mother's love. Mother's love is the only love, unconditional love. So thus began a guru-disciple relationship which is quite unique in the history of spiritual masters. This combination of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Narendranath Datta is unique in the history of the spiritual masters. Narendra now became a frequent visitor to Dakshineshwar, and under the guidance of the master, when I say master here, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, made rapid strides on the spiritual path. At Dakshineshwar, Narendra also met several young men who were devoted to Sri Ramakrishna, and they all become close friends. Swami Vivekananda, still he is Narendranath, met the so many other young people who are having the same intentions. to know what they want. So he became close to many people. He became the center of attraction among all the people because Swami Vivekananda, having so many qualities, is a great singer and he can play the music and is also very strong personality, like a modern heroes. Very strong personality and absolutely very fluent speaking English in those days. So having the knowledge, having the skills like music and other skills, oratory skills, and 100% effective concentration, pure mind, photographic memory, photographic scanning any book. So as Narendranath became very close to Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and had many friends, the days are going on, passing on. Suddenly, some difficult situations taken place. What are those difficult situations? After a few years, two events took place which caused Narendra considerable distress. Two incidents. One was the sudden death of his father in 1884. His father was a great advocate, great lawyer, and he is the one taking care of the family. And Narendra was the elder son to the father, their parents, and is having the two brothers and sisters. And his father passed away in 1884. This left the family penniless, no money. And Narendra had to bear the burden of supporting his mother, brothers, and sisters. Look at see, whenever you want some inspiration to overcome the difficulties, the challenges in our life, read the great personalities stories. That's what Patanjali Maharshi also suggested in one of the sutra. See, look at Swami Vivekananda. Today we are worshipping him. You know how many hardships he undergone. At the young age, you know how many years Swami left? He left the body. At the age of 38, he created so many things and he left the body. And when he was young, father was passed away, having the brothers and sisters and mother, and there is no money. Just imagine the situation of Narendra. That is one of the very what you call is a difficult situation, very crucial situation. What is the second one? The second event was the illness of Sri Ramakrishna. His guru, Sri Ramakrishna, which was diagnosed to be cancer of the throat. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa got the cancer, throat cancer. In September 1885, Sri Ramakrishna was moved to a house at Shampukur and a few months later to a rented villa at Kasipur. Till today, these places are there, very worshipable places. In these two places, the young disciples nursed the master with devoted care. In spite of poverty at home and inability to find a job for himself, Narendra joined the group as its leader. Observe, if some simple difficulty comes in our life, we will be holding our head saying, why it is happening to me, why it is happening to me, why me, so many problems are coming to me. Look at young Narendra. Father is passed away, there is no money and so many responsibilities. At the same time, his guru got ill. And the responsibilities at the home, responsibilities at the guru's place. He never run away from there. That's what we need to study and understand the great people. Now, somehow, he overcome all those obstacles, all those problems by the blessings of the Guru Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and by the blessings of Mother Kali. There are so many incidents happen in between. If we have to study the life history of the Swami Vivekananda, at least it will take the 7 days. At least 7 days. Because I know some of our friends, they have done Saptaha on Swami Vivekananda life. 7 days they have done. So hence we are cutting short the stories, okay? And we will enter the contribution. Then awareness of life's mission. Then next step, Swami Vivekananda took as an awareness of life mission. Before that, beginning of a monastic brotherhood. So Sri Ramakrishna instilled in this young man the spirit of renunciation and brotherly love for one another. One day he distributed ochre ropes among them and sent them to beg food. In this way, Narendranath himself laid the foundation for a new monastic order. He gave specific instructions to Narendra about the formation of a new monastic order. In the small hours of in the small hours within 16th August 1886, Sri Ramakrishna gave up his mortal body. After the master's passing, 15 of his young disciples at Baranagar in the North Kolkata, under the leadership of Narendra, they formed a new monastic brotherhood, and in 1887 they took the formal oath of sannyasa, thereby assuming new names. So Narendra now became Swami Vivekananda. Actually, this name is not taken by Swami Vivekananda at the time of sannyasa. This name was actually assumed much later, because Swami Vivekananda used to travel throughout India with different names. There are so many stories how he got the name of Vivekananda. So we are not going into the details of how he got the name. Then awareness of the life mission. So Swami Vivekananda thought, what is the purpose of my life? After establishing the new monastic order, Vivekananda heard the inner call for a greater mission in his life. While most of the followers of Sri Ramakrishna thought of him in relation to their own personal lives, but Vivekananda thought of the master in relation to India and the rest of the world. As the prophet of the present age, what was Sri Ramakrishna's message to the modern world and to India in particular? So this question and the awareness of his own inert powers urged Swami Vivekananda to go out alone into the wide world. So in the middle of 1890, after receiving the blessings of Sri Sharada Devi, the divine consort of Sri Ramakrishna, known to the world as a Holy Mother, who was then staying in Kolkata, the Swamiji left Baranagar Mutt and embarked on a long journey of exploration and discovery of India. So he traveled all over the India as a Parivrajika Sannyasi. Those days, not much facilities to travel. Sometimes he used to eat, sometimes if the food is available, he used to eat. If it is not available, no. So he traveled all over the India as a Parivrajika to find out the discovery of real India. What is this Bharat? During his travel all over India, Swami Vivekananda was deeply moved to see the appalling poverty and backwardness of the masses. He was the first religious leader in India to understand and openly declare that the real cause of India's downfall was the neglect of the masses. The first statement. Why? Even though India is a rich country, but Indian people are poor people. Not now, in olden days. Now everyone is rich because we are having so much knowledge. We understood that this knowledge is good enough to rule the entire world. Because neglecting the masses, India is falling down. People used to say so many things to these masses. People used to keep them in a distance. They are not teaching them to the Vedas and other things. There are so many causes. And Swami Vivekananda understood the cause. Then he declared immediately need was to provide the food and other bare necessities of life to the hungry millions. Then there Swami Vivekananda makes one quotation. If anyone is in hungry, don't teach Vedanta. If anyone is in hungry, first you feed the food. First make that person's stomach full. Let that person have the sufficient, proper, enough nutritious food. Then that person can understand when you teach something. So what I am suggesting all of you, so before our session, eat nicely and then only come to the class. At the same time, don't eat too much so that you will fall into sleep. Eat moderately so that you will not become weak or you will not feel the drowsy. So eat and come so that then only you can listen to the Vedanta. So don't teach anyone if they are in a hungry mood. First you feed. Okay. So for this, they should be taught improved methods of agriculture, village industries, etc. It was in the next context that Vivekananda grasped the crux of the problem of poverty in India. Owing to centuries of the oppression, the downtrodden masses had lost faith in their capacity to improve their lot. It was first of all necessary to infuse into their minds faith in themselves. So anything if you want to do, first we need to inculcate the confidence into that person. Once when you create the confidence into the person, that person can do anything and everything. If not having the confidence in one's own self, it is very difficult. So Swami Vivekananda, one way, asking the people and providing the facilities for the removing the poverty. At the second level, creating the confidence in themselves. These are the two important things. If anyone wants to do any social service, some people will be interested. I want to do some service. Choose these two. Inculcate the confidence in the people and provide the food to the needy people. This is the most important. And how long you will provide the food to the needy people? Today morning you will provide the breakfast and after 3 hours that fellow is hungry again. So hence create the confidence in that person so that that person can able to earn and eat the food. First you need to give the food, then at the same time you need to inculcate the confidence and make that person to worthy to take care by himself or herself. Otherwise, how long you will feed? So you make that people the independent with the self-confident. And while traveling the all over India, Swami Vivekananda, he reached the Kanyakumari. The Kanyakumari is the tip of the India, and it is also a place where the three oceans meet. And there, after reaching the Kanyakumari, he saw a big rock in the ocean. And that ocean, by the time, is already very popular, known as, there is a historical story is there to that rock. What is that? It is considered, it is believed that Mother Parvati did the penance for the Shiva. So still on the rock, there is a footprint is there. And there is a temple is there. Kanyakumari temple is there. Very, very powerful ancient temple. And when Swami Vivekananda reached there, he wanted to go and sit on the rock. But it is the ocean. And he found some people, if anyone is there, to take him to in the boat to the rock. No one was there. Without no second thought, Swami Vivekananda jumped into the ocean, swam over the ocean, sat on the rock for 3 days, 3 nights, looking at towards the India, sat in a meditation for 3 days and 3 nights. See the courage of Swami Vivekananda, jumped into the ocean, swam across that ocean up to the rock. Sometime when you come to the India, you can visit the Vivekananda, this rock memorial. Now it is called rock memorial, Kanyakumari. People will go in a steamer. It will take couple of minutes, not that 1 minute, 2 minutes. But Swami Vivekananda jumped into the ocean and sat there facing towards the Mother India, did the meditation about the India. By the time he traveled all over the India, he has seen the challenges in India, he has seen the opportunities in India, he has seen everything in India while traveling. He did the meditation. Then a decision to attend the Parliament of Religions taken place. It was when this idea were taking shape in his mind in the course of his wandering that Swami Vivekananda heard about the world's Parliament of Religions to be held in Chicago in 1893. Swami Vivekananda's friends and admirers in India wanted him to attend the Parliament. He too felt that the Parliament would provide the right forum to present his master's message to the world, and so he decided to go to America. Another reason which prompted Swamiji to go to America was to seek financial help for his project of uplifting the masses. So Swamiji, however, wanted to have an inner certitude and divine call regarding his mission. Both of these he got while he sat in deep meditation on the rock island at Kanyakumari. With the funds partially collected by his Chennai disciples, those days it was called Madras, and partially provided by the Raja of Khetri, Swami Vivekananda left for America from Bombay on 31st May 1893. The Bombay is called now Mumbai. The Parliament of Religions, and after Swamiji was waiting. People are asking, can you speak Swamiji now? No. After some time, after some time, after some time. That's what some people says. But when he got a chance, when his name was called, his speech at the World's Parliament of Religions held in September 1893 made him famous as an orator by divine right and as a messenger of India, as a messenger of Indian wisdom to the Western world. After the Parliament, Swamiji spent nearly 3.5 years spreading Vedanta as lived and taught by Sri Ramakrishna, mostly in the eastern parts of USA and also in London. The first words delivered by Swami Vivekananda is, "My dear sisters and brothers of America." So far, no one used this word sisters and brothers. People used to say Mr. and Mrs. or ladies and gentlemen. When Swami Vivekananda uttered these words, there is a magnetic power is there in the voice of Swami Vivekananda. A divine power is guiding him. Within a few minutes, Swami Vivekananda became world famous monk of India. Within a few minutes, the next day morning, in all the newspapers, talking only about Swami Vivekananda. And in the Chicago, oh my God, how many obstacles is undergone before entering into the Parliament of Speeches. He was sleeping on a train bogie. There are so many incidents. Please go through the life history of Swami Vivekananda. If you go through the life history of Swami Vivekananda, whatever the problems you are having in your life, nothing. Nothing means nothing. You don't feel that all your problems are as a problems only. They are like a what you say, like a neeti budaga we use in Telugu, bubbles. They are like a bubbles. Then oof, all those things will go. That is our problems. But we take into the magnifying glass and we look at, oh, I am having this problem. I am having this problem. What is your problem? Your problem is nothing. No problem at all. Read Swami Vivekananda. Get some inspiration. And Swami Vivekananda started teaching the Vedanta, as well as Swami Vivekananda taught Raja Yoga Sutras, Patanjali Yoga Sutras also. And this is the time Swami Vivekananda made yoga as a very popular. He created the seed for the Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga. Popularized these 4 yogas. This is one of the question may come in your exam. Who popularized the 4 yogas? By Swami Vivekananda. And Swami Vivekananda's famous quotation about this yoga, and there is a goal. I can sum up the teachings of Swami Vivekananda in one quotation of Swami Vivekananda. Each soul is a potentially divine. We have to manifest that divinity by controlling the nature external and internal. Do this either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, by one or more or all of these, and be free. So in this statement, in this quotation, there is a goal, there is a means. What is the statement? Each soul is potentially divine, is a statement. So what is our goal? If that is a statement, what is our goal? Our goal is to manifest this divinity, because each soul is a potentially divine. So each soul means we are also included in that one. So when my soul is the divine, what is my goal? I have to manifest that divinity. How can I manifest this divinity? Swamiji says, by controlling nature external and internal. Swamiji, I asked you one question. What is that? How can I manifest that divinity? And you are telling me by controlling the nature externally and internally. Now I am having the one more question. What is your question? How to control my nature internally and externally? I don't know anything. It's why I am coming to you. And you say you control the nature internal and external. How to control? Then Swami Vivekananda says, do this either by work What do you mean by work here? Karma yoga. Or worship, bhakti yoga. Or a psychic control, raja yoga. Or philosophy, jnana yoga. By one or more. More means you can take the 2, 3, 4 or all together, but be free. This is the teachings of Swami Vivekananda in the briefest of the brief. So the next comes other great Mahatmas, because we have taken very good time for highlighting Swami Vivekananda, because he is the founder of everything for us. Because yoga is becoming popular, all other great Mahatmas also got the inspiration from Swami Vivekananda. Now look at the next, Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo. Aurobindo is one of them among the great personalities who popularized yoga. And the special statement of Sri Aurobindo is synthesis of yoga. Sri Aurobindo contributed the synthesis of yoga. Sometimes this question comes in the exam. What is the contribution of the Sri Aurobindo? Synthesis of yoga. And the statement of Sri Aurobindo, the systematic methodology of unfoldment of this inner potential divinity by moving towards self-perfection is referred to as yoga by Sri Aurobindo. I repeat once again, the systematic methodology of unfoldment of this inner potential divinity by moving towards a self-perfection is yoga according to Sri Aurobindo. And also Sri Aurobindo says the one more thing, yoga is thus, the one more definition, quotation from Sri Aurobindo, yoga is thus a process by which the animal man ascends through the stages man, superman, and the divine man. In this process, the limited, narrow, selfish thinking completely changes and takes the shape of an integrated, all-encompassing, selfless character expressed by equanimity. This state of divinity or a self-perfection is the state of pure consciousness, maximum creativity and bliss. Hence, the movement towards that through yoga is a delightful, a blissful process. Since every individual or society is always striving to achieve greater happiness, bliss, creativity, and higher mental faculties, yoga clearly is the real solution both for individual fulfillment and social harmony. So the divergent are the methods of yoga. Unless one sees the underlying unity and harmony, one is apt to lose track amidst diversities. Once the insight into the unity in diversity develops, this you can note down, once the insight into the unity in diversity develops, the truth about the comprehensive nature of yoga emerges. I repeat, once the insight into the unity in diversity develops, the truth about the comprehensive nature of yoga emerges. This central note of harmony was emphatically sounded in the speeches of Swami Vivekananda. He called for men with muscles of iron, nerves of steel. And Sri Aurobindo laid stress on comprehensive growth of personality at the physical, mental, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual levels. In one way, Sri Aurobindo got the inspiration from Swami Vivekananda, and he emphasized more and more and developed the things. And Sri Aurobindo started a ashram in the Pondicherry, and Aurobindo also wrote the commentaries on different spiritual textbooks, especially Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and he established the synthesis of yoga and Aurobindo Ashram located in Pondicherry. And till today, the Aurobindo Ashram is serving the many people. Whoever wants, they can go and they can stay there. That is a small of the smallest information about the Aurobindo. The more you can go through Aurobindo Society's website about Sri Aurobindo. And next to come Swami Maharshi Dayananda Saraswati. Okay, other than the whatever the names we have described so far, one here mentioning Maharshi Dayananda Saraswati is purely for upholding the sanctity and purity and enhancing the influence of the Vedas. The most important work done by Dayananda Saraswati is the purity and enhancing the influence of the Vedas, the popularizing the Vedas more and more and their culture. Okay, and Maharshi Dayananda Saraswati is a social reformer and upholder of the Vedic values. He worked relentlessly to promote the physical, spiritual, and social progress of all mankind. And he is the one. Jnana, karma, and bhakti are not the three separate paths, but they flow together. Even if you look at the karma, bhakti, jnana, raja yoga, we are mentioning the four, but all the four are leading to only one. So he emphasizes jnana, karma, and bhakti are not the three separate paths, but they flow together. These three aspects complement one another on the path of salvation. Swami Dayananda Saraswati was a living example of the union of these three paths. Maharshi Dayananda was an embodiment of great yogis, sages, and siddhas. So if the only one possible question from this great Maharshi Dayananda Saraswati is making the karma, bhakti, jnana, three paths are not separate, but they flow together. These three aspects complement one another on the path of salvation. This is the point, may be twisted in a different way to ask the question. Okay, so what is the main contribution of the Dayananda Saraswati? Making the karma, jnana, bhakti into the one flow together. Why one flow together? Because each one is supporting to the others. Then next comes the last, as per your syllabus, Ramana Maharishi. So the great Rishi of the modern times is Ramana Maharshi. Ramana Maharshi is the life period is, he took birth in 1879 and left the body in 1950. When we remember the Ramana Maharshi, automatically one question comes in our mind, one thought comes in the mind. One who knows the Ramana Maharshi or Ramana Maharshi philosophy. What is that? Who am I? Only one question. If you go and ask Ramana any questions, Ramana Maharshi, I want to know this, I want to know that, or what is this, what is that? He asks, who want to know? I want to know. Who is that? I find out first. You ask anything, finally comes back to that. Who is that is asking? Then you say, I am asking. Who is that I find out? So who am I is a very popular question with Ramana Maharshi. It goes in a hand in hand. It's like a synonymous to Ramana Maharshi to who am I? So the Sri Ramana Maharshi was probably the most famous sage of the 20th century, both in India and the rest of the world. He was renowned for his saintly life, for being fully realized, and for the powerful transmissions that often occurred to visitors in his presence. At the age of 16, he realized spontaneously and ran away to Arunachala, one of India's traditional holy sites, where he stayed for the rest of his life. So many people came to see him there that an ashram was built around him. Many of his close devotees were regarded by their peers as self-realized. And the few incidents I can tell here about the Ramana Maharshi, because I have also visited quite a number of times. One day, people asked him, Ramana Maharshi, can you please teach the Brahma Jnanam? What is the Advaita Vedanta? What is this Brahma Jnanam? Who am I? Then Ramana said, okay, fine, because many people are keeping on asking. So Ramana said, okay, so today evening I will teach. So let us meet in one place. So everyone gathered in Arunachal, some hundreds of people waiting for the Ramana. So Ramana Maharshi came, he sat. So people are eagerly, attentively waiting to listen from Ramana. 1 hour is passed. 2 hours are over. 3 hours are over. 5, 6, 7, 8 hours are over. Then he got up, he said, Purinjida, and he went away. What is the Purinjida means? Did you understood? He went away. He taught everything in that silence. If you look at the Dakshinamurti Stotra, Maunavyakhya Prakatita Para Brahma, because the Brahman cannot be spoken here. That's what Ramana wants to say. How can you talk about the Brahman? Can anyone please explain to me what is the sweetness? You are having the 14 participants now. Can anyone tell me what is the sweetness? I am not asking you to give me the examples for the sweetness. I am asking you, tell me what is the sweetness?
It is a taste.
What kind of taste? Tell me that. Sweet is a taste. I agree with you. Sweet is a taste, but what is the sweetness?
वो चखो तो जानो, आप चखो तो जानो.
That means one has to experience by oneself. But Nainama says, Jako to jano, but I cannot able to tell you. You need to experience. That's what Ramana says. There are many things we have to experience. Then you may say, oh, next week onwards, I need not to attend the classes. So I can sit in my home. I can just to know about my own self. Then why these informations and all these things? It helps us to find out, to think properly, to systematically adopt the methodology. Even Ramana Maharshi wrote a beautiful book, certain beautiful books. I read the 2 books. When one is called Upadesha Sara. Please read. In this Upadesha Sara, all the 4 yogas are covered very systematically. Ramana starts from the Karma Yoga and he shows the limitations into the Karma Yoga and takes that the person into the Bhakti Yoga. Beautifully, in a 3 shlokas, he completed the Karma Yoga. And after explaining the Bhakti Yoga, Ramana shows the limitations in the Bhakti Yoga, takes towards the Raja Yoga. And after teaching this Raja Yoga, he shows the limitations in the Raja Yoga, takes to the Jnana Yoga. Karturajnaya karma kim param. And these shlokas are available in Sanskrit, Telugu and Tamil. One of the beautiful work, the greatest contribution. Those who are into the path of yoga, those who are into the path of spirituality, I strongly recommend to read this Upadesha Sara. And there is one more book is there, Shad Darshana. Not the Shad Darshanas what we have discussed in the previous class, nothing to do with that and this. Here it is called Sat Darshana. So over a period of time it became a Shad Darshana, Sat Darshana, Darshana of the Sat. The one more book. These are the two books are good enough, and there are some stories, Vedanta through stories by Ramana. Most of the things are written by his devotees, the disciples who are there. So what is the greatest contribution of the Ramana Maharshi? Making the seekers to inquire, who am I? And at the age of 16, if you visit the Madurai anytime, in the Madurai, if I am not wrong, East Nada, I think, opposite to that, one of the entrance of the Madurai Meenakshi temple, because the four entrances are there, one of the entrance, if you go a little further, a small lane is there. In the small lane, there is a Ramana's building is there. Some ashram kind of thing is there, where that building belongs to Ramana's uncle. And Ramana used to stay in that house. There he first time experienced the death. He was wondering what is this death means, what? So he was doing the Shavasana, not like a Shavasana what we are doing. When we are practicing the Shavasana, suddenly mosquito comes and our hand goes and like this. But Ramana is practicing this Shavasana, the experience of the death. He experienced what is death. Then he decided, let me go back to the Arunachala. Arunachala is calling me. Tiruvannamalai. Ramana's life, so simple. Very, very, very simple. Look at the pictures of the Ramana. Just one line cloth. And in the presence of the Ramana, even animals and other peoples used to be very quiet and peace. Until today, people goes to the Tiruvannamalai, they will do the Giri Pradakshina, which is very, very auspicious. And there is a Arunachaleshwara temple is there, Agni Linga. So this is about Ramana Maharshi. So I am 100% sure that I have not done the justification for all these great Mahatmas, the great personalities. What I tried today is to inculcate the ideas about these great personalities. And these great personalities, the life history and the teachings are like a lighthouse. All these great personalities, life is a lighthouse to us. So let us utilize of the life histories of these great Mahatmas, and let us progress in our spiritual path, in the path of yoga. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.